All right, welcome to the Rock Shop Community Podcast. I'm here with my guest, Eric McCarthy, the director of the Nyack Library. Welcome, Eric.
Oh, thanks, Dylan.
It's so nice to meet you, and we've never spoken before, so this is extra fun because I just get like a quick meeting of somebody.
Right.
Thank you to our sponsors, which is the Rock Shop in Nyack. You can find us at 98 Main Street, therockshopnyack.com. And thanks to my previous guests and everybody who listens. And I hope that you enjoy our conversation. So, Eric, how are you today?
I'm great. I'm doing really well. Thanks.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming in and doing this. And you just found out that I used to work at the Nyack Library, which is fun. But let's start somewhere else. Where did you grow up, Eric?
I grew up in Saratoga Springs. I was born in Albany, New York. Lived the first couple years of my life there, but mainly grew up in Saratoga Springs. Mm-hmm. Spent the first 18 years of my life there, and then sort of went off to college and moved after that. But,
cool. And did you grow up with brothers and sisters?
I do, yeah. I have a brother, younger brother and younger sister who both still live in Saratoga Springs. Yeah.
And parents?
Yep. My mom has passed away. My dad moved away from Saratoga, but yeah, I still have a lot of ties and family in Saratoga Springs.
Cool. And do you get up there often to see everybody?
I do, not as much as I would like to, but I'm planning a trip this summer to go visit my sister and brother and hang out with them, and then probably something in the fall. And then we try to get together on holidays and things. Sometimes they'll come down here, but it's life gets in the way. Right?
Sure does.
Yeah,
sure does. Especially when you try to do a million things,
right? Like
podcasts and stuff.
Right.
Right on. Well, Eric, so growing up, you had what was Dad doing? What was Mom doing?
So there's a bank in Saratoga Springs called Adirondack Trust. Mm-hmm. My mom was a teller for that bank. My dad actually had worked for a record distributor, music distributor, that did cutouts mostly, called One Way Records.
What's a
in
cutout?
Albany. Cutout is when labels print way too many copies of a record and they can't sell them at the top price, and then they put a cut in the corner and sell it for a lot cheaper. So that's why they're called cutouts. Right. Overstocks, they get called, but in the record business, they're called cutouts.
Right.
So he did that.
Would that be like BMG, 100 CDs for 10 cents?
Actually, not exactly. So that sort of pyramid scheme, I'm not sure exactly falls into this. This is really just a way station for records that they pressed too many copies of.
Okay.
And and also different from things where and I'm speaking to the people who used to buy records many, many, many years ago, because I'm obviously older than you, but they had things called the Nice Price or Super Saver series where they would sell records for a cheaper price. But those were actually just catalog titles that still sell, but weren't brand new. So like the equivalent of a paperback book.
Got it.
And yeah, so he did that, and yeah.
Cool. Would that be something that would end up in like a bargain bin?
Yeah, so it's called the cutout bin. It's funny. It's record store day, and we're talking about records, which is really fun.
Right. It's great.
Yeah, it's actually perfect. So usually it's called the cutout bin.
Okay.
And it's where I shopped for records when I was a teenager. I mean, obviously that was your whatever allowance you got went a lot farther when you shopped in the cutout bin than you did on the other side of the record store, which was the full price records.
Right.
So, I mean, they were all sealed. They were, it was just that, if a record sold for $7.98 or $8.98 or $9.98, which was a pretty common price point then, and I'm talking about the 80s, then the cutout record would be $3.99 or $2.99.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
So, and then you needed people to act as, the warehouse for that. And that's what he did.
Right on.
Yeah.
And I love the record business. I love hearing about the cutout stuff. And
yeah,
obviously it's antiquated now, but being that it's Record Store Day, I'd like to shout out Main Street Beat.
Of course.
Line around the corner this morning.
I was there this morning myself buying a record. I like to sort of poke my head into a record store as often as I can.
Right
And
on.
so when I was coming over here to do this, I thought, you know what, I'm going to go over there and see what's happening.
Cool. Did you get anything good?
I did. I bought. Well, I didn't buy anything that was a record store day record. There's a brand new Alice Coltrane record. She's John Coltrane's wife, who had a career of her own that is magnificent. And there's a recent reissue of her live in Carnegie Hall in 1971 that came out, and I bought that.
Ooh, on vinyl or
on vinyl? Yeah,
nice.
And it's I'm sure going to be a beautiful thing, and I can't wait to get it home and play it.
That sounds awesome. You got your night planned.
Yeah, I do indeed. I do indeed.
I used to do the record collecting thing, and then one day I was buying stuff that I could only get on iTunes, and I was buying it on iTunes. I was paying for it as a musician. I want to pay for music.
Sure.
And then I was just like, you know what? I see the way this is going. I think I'm just going to go all in and go all digital.
Yeah.
And I did, and I sold my record collection. Actually, I gave away my record collection. And at the time, it made a lot of sense because I was trying to downsize. One day when I'm not worried too much about space and things like that, I will restart my record collection, and I just can't wait.
Yeah, so space is a big thing. For me, it's just like, I don't know another way. I mean, I've been doing it since I was a little kid, so it's just how I consume music.
Right.
By buying records.
Right,
so,
right.
Anyway.
Yeah, for me as a little kid, I grew up with listening to the radio, and I grew up with tape cassettes.
Oh, yeah.
And then CDs, and then somehow retroactively went to records, and then the digital market just to me became clear that this is the way that it's going. And I was like, as begrudgingly as possible, I was like, okay, all right, I'll just get everything digitally. And now I'm like trying to think maybe I should get rid of Spotify and get it on YouTube, when you start to learn how awful they treat the artists and everything. But I don't know, haven't quite gotten there yet. But anyway, enough about records and me right now. So you go, your dad's that, your mom's that, you're growing up in Saratoga Springs. I only know that place from Skidmore, and then like the history of the mafia and the racetracks and stuff like that.
Those are two things.
Yeah. Did that come across at any point, or was this kind of 80s is a little late for that, right?
Well, no. Oh, no. I mean, the sort of the seedy underbelly of Saratoga was sort of existed and you knew about. It's been pretty cleaned up now, so it's not what it was. But there used to be like off-track betting and things like that, and the harness track is there too. The flat track, the thoroughbreds is pretty. It's pretty much professional, but then there's like, the harness track, which is a little less so anyways. But Skidmore, was always sort of a presence growing up, being a teenager and realizing, there's this cool college just down the street. And, a lot of culture sort of swirled around that, which was pretty cool. I mean, there was theater, there was music, there was film. So growing up in a college town made me really appreciate Saratoga in that way. And made it sort of opened a window on things in your life that you might not have in a different type of town.
Right, for sure. It's like probably growing up in Nyack, even though it's not a college town, it has its charms and its music. And I grew up in a place without any of that, but my ex-girlfriend went to Skidmore.
Oh, okay,
so I
cool.
got a lot of chances to visit up there. And experience some of that culture, and then visited a few times. But that's all I really know about it, other than like folklore stuff. But so tell me about your childhood. Were you into sports, music, theater, drama? What did you do?
Yeah, so pretty much music was what I was really interested in, and not so much playing music, but sort of immersing myself in that. So there's a pretty famous coffee shop in Saratoga Springs called Cafe Lena that I used to work at, folk coffee shop that certainly in the 60s, a lot of really big names played at. I worked in the 80s, and a lot of people that I admire, folk musicians or jazz musicians even, played there. And so I started off as a dishwasher, and then worked as, a waiter, and kind of did just whatever Lena needed. So I worked there for a while. I worked at the record store for a while. I worked at I worked at the Skidmore radio station while I was in high school too. So I used to take my bike over there and do a jazz show, and I did a punk rock show. And, so, I mean, and then just music was sort of something I was really interested in when I was a teenager. And before going to college, it was sort of something that I thought I wanted to make my life. But yeah, that's, it was consumed with listening to music and surrounding myself with music. That's, I could probably say that pretty fairly.
Right on. And you mentioned folk, you mentioned jazz, you mentioned punk, and the Skidmore DJ thing. You got a great voice for it.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's awesome. Good voice for a podcast, good voice for a DJ. I could just be like, hey, this is Eric McCarthy over at WVUB presenting the Ramones' new album.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Cool. So then college. Okay.
Yep.
So Skidmore, that whole upstate thing. Where'd you go to college and what'd you study?
So I went to Ithaca College. I wanted to study communications because I thought, I would do something around radio or something like that. But what I ended up being was an art history major.
Okay.
I mean, I love the culture of it and I like the history of it. So, it's what I fell into and it's what I loved. And I still do. I still appreciate, appreciate art, and I appreciate reading about it and sort of understanding the context when it was created and things like that. So, but yeah, I studied art history, spent 4.5 years in Ithaca, New York, and graduated there.
Nice. Yeah. Ithaca is gorgeous, as we know.
It is. Yep.
Couldn't help it.
I know, right? So says the bumper sticker.
I've been up there a few times and, passed through and seen whatever's up there. It's pretty cool.
It is.
It's gorgeous, literally.
Yeah, it is.
And cool. So you went to school there. You became an art history major.
Yep.
So we talking like Renaissance? What are we talking?
I was interested in modern art.
Modern
art. That was my interest, 20th century modern. But when you do an undergrad art history major, you really have to have a pretty wide, your course load covers the history of art. So you can sort of focus on it in the the third and the fourth year. You can sort of focus on the type of things that you want to study. But the first couple of years was spent sort of learning about the whole range of art. Yeah.
Right. And you still have to take core classes.
That's right.
Oh,
That's
man.
right. Yeah.
Nobody told me that when I was going to college. I was like, wait, what math class do I have to take? I'm so mad.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yep.
So cool. So you graduate from Ithaca College.
Yep.
And then what do you do after that?
So I moved to Jersey City, just outside of Manhattan, and I had gotten a job at a sort of a pretty notorious, I guess is the word, video store / music store in the Village called Kim's. There were 4 of them. I worked in the one called Kim's West, which was on Bleecker and West 10th. I came in as the record buyer, sort of the thing I knew to fall back on when I didn't really know what I was going to do with an art history degree. I said, well, I know I know enough about music where I can be a buyer. Ultimately, I became the manager of that store. There were, and I did it for like maybe 2.5 to 3 years.
Sorry about that. We are back, and let's pick up off where you were at. You just moved to Jersey City, and you were working in the Village on Bleecker and
West 10th.
West 10th at
Kim's.
Okay, and you were the record buyer.
I was a music buyer there, and then became the manager of the store. And just for your listeners or whatever, but Kim's is a pretty funny place. There's a brand new movie about Kim's that just came out.
Cool.
It's playing in the city right now. And he was a real character. He built this video store that catered to finding things that obviously normal video stores wouldn't have. So real underground things. The best selling videos or laser discs, or I mean, this was pre-DVDs, were, movies that were more talked about than actually seen, or at least in my, coming to this place as like a 22 or 23-year-old kid, you would hear about, whatever, some German filmmaker, and there was no way you could have gotten a chance to see that in the town that you were at. There was no streaming. That didn't exist. You couldn't dial up anything on YouTube. You actually had to find a physical copy of this.
Right.
And so people came from all over to find a physical copy of, a Fassbinder movie that, they had read about one time in a book or in a review. So it was this really awesome experience because I learned so much about, it was almost like being in second college, because I learned all about this sort of underground culture that I did, for the most part, didn't know existed. The music was a little easier to sort of grasp, but the film stuff was a real lesson.
Right on. And
lesson.
This is late 80s?
This is, early 90s.
Early 90s.
Yep.
Village.
Yep.
So you were in the thick of it.
Yeah, it was cool. It was definitely cool. There was a lot of cool bands, and there was a lot of cool people making art, and and people gravitated to not only Kim's but some of those other places in the Village. There was this place that opened up right across. Tower used to be on Broadway and 4th Street. And there was a place that opened up, which was cleverly named Other Music. They also made a documentary about that. So Other Music would be, the record store that sold the things that weren't in Tower, right? And they, and there were, in stores there, and there was just, a lot of clubs and things happening. So it was a pretty cool time to be there for sure.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. It's such a bizarre situation that all of a sudden in the year like 99, 2000, it's just like, goodbye record stores, goodbye the whole way of life that we've had for decades.
Yeah.
Music industry, we need you to come back. Come back. Anyway, so you're there for how many years?
I was there probably till about 95. I had met, I had actually hired somebody to do the music buying, or maybe, anyways, and her husband was living in Westchester. And was involved with these other record store guys. So they were looking for somebody to run one of their stores actually in Mount Kisco, New York. And I thought, what I was doing at the time was kind of burning me out a little bit. So I thought, that might be kind of a cool change. It was a brand new store. It had only been open for less than a year. And they were like, why don't you come up, run the store? We can offer you a stake in the store if you're interested.
Ooh.
So that was, kind of a cool opportunity. So I moved up to Mount Kisco, New York, and started running that store. And it was called Exile on Main Street in Mount Kisco. And like Kim's also was a cool sort of community hub, different than Kim's, obviously, because it was the suburbs, but an awesome experience, and did that for many years. Yeah.
So many years puts us into
early 2000s.
Early 2000s,
like 2000 and 2001. Around that time, I met my current wife, who was a au pair from Germany named Carol. We're still together.
Nice. Current,
yeah. And at that time, the store, as you had already mentioned, it wasn't Spotify, and it wasn't streaming. It was Napster. Yeah. And I remember sitting at the counter of this record store in Mount Kisco, and this kid coming in with a laptop and opening it up and saying, "Hey, check this out." And he showed me the top 10 records I had sitting on my shelf for sale, and he had them all on his computer. And I was like, wow, what's that about? And he's like, oh, it's free. I was like, what? And I thought, and I thought at that point, I was like, oh, this is my business model. This is how I make money, right? And as you said, 99 is maybe a little early, but by 2000, 2001, the writing was on the wall, that this is not what it's going to be. There used to be, and I'll just give you an example because it's kind of, it's the example I usually give when I talk about the changing of the nature of that business. Is we used to have, like, for instance, let's say the Beastie Boys came out with a record. You would have a stack of them that you would stand right next to the cash register, and everybody who came in would want that new CD, and you would just sell them one right after the other, right? Those stacks would get shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter until then you didn't need to do that, And it's funny, the release dates used to be on Tuesdays for brand new music, and for really big records, you would stay open until midnight on Monday, and people would come in on Monday night at midnight to buy whatever the new thing was. It wasn't necessary anymore because you could just get it on demand. Yeah. And sometimes before the date that the thing was released.
So it was leaked.
It was leaked, right. So then, all that excitement, that's what's kind of cool about Record Store Day, though, just to sort of as a tangent, is that, the fact that they had lines around the block sort of reminded me of that time in the 90s when it was like there was that same sort of excitement about new releases. So that's encouraging to see, to hear about lines around the block and stuff like that. So it used to be like that. But then, like I said, the writing's sort of on the wall. By 2001, 2, it's pretty clear that this is a business model that needs to significantly change, or we're just gonna, it's gonna die.
It's over.
Yeah.
What a bleak situation it is, really. I remember Napster coming out too, and me and my friends just putting on playlists all night and hanging out. And your connection's too slow, bro. I wanted to get, I want to get ELO on here. Yeah. And what a bleak situation as an artist, especially artists who I know who were coming up around 1998. They were just like, whoa, wait. I thought we had a record deal.
Right.
Yikes. So writing's on the wall.
Yep.
You're in Westchester, Mount Kisco.
Yep.
You have met your partner / wife.
Yep.
And you see it. Okay, pivot time.
Yeah. So pivot, right. So she, and I credit my wife for this wholeheartedly. She had come from Germany. She was an au pair, and she looked at public libraries from a point of view that I had never looked at them before, because in Germany they are not this way. They're not the community centers that they are here. And she, as an au pair, would use libraries every single day. And she thought that they were just about the coolest things that ever existed. She was like, oh my God, these are great. So I started using the library more, and I started thinking about how the record store was a community, and it was this cool, just meeting point for a lot of musicians and people who were interested in music, and people would get together and talk. And I kind of saw the library in a similar way. And I like being plugged into community. And I know you do too. We had a little conversation before this about that. I'm also excited about building community. I'm excited about people getting together and talking in person and having a place to go to that's not their home. So I thought, let's do that. Let's become a librarian.
Nice.
So I got a job, actually, a clerk position in Peekskill, New York, just to see if it was something that I really wanted to do. So I became a clerk, and a clerk essentially is just in this case, not essentially, but in this case is somebody who checks books in and out, empties book drops, helps people with directional questions like where's the bathroom, that sort of thing. So, it's like almost a little bit like a cash register person, but a little bit more because you're involved in some other aspects of the work. So I did that for several years while I was going to graduate school.
Mm-hmm. And also, often I remember I did that too. I worked at Circulation.
Very
Oftentimes
cool.
people would ask me for book recommendations.
Yeah.
So it wasn't just like you was
Yeah.
checking in books, but I also worked in the CRC, the Computer
Yep.
Resource Center as well.
And you're talking about the Nyack Library.
At Nyack Library.
Yeah, that's great. That's
It was
great.
it was my first real job when I moved here.
Very cool.
I mean, I had Starbucks, but I mean, it was my first one where I was like, okay, I like this, and I enjoyed it. And I met a lot of people through the library, which helped me get a foothold in the community.
Yep.
And yeah, I loved it. I had a lot of great times there. So,
Yeah.
cool. So you get your degree, your graduate degree.
Yep.
And now you're like full all in
Librarian.
Nice.
That's right.
My sister's a librarian, by the way,
Oh, cool. Where's she a librarian?
in Tufts University.
Oh, okay. She's academic librarian. Yeah, that's cool.
She's serious, bro.
Yeah. We call it the dark side when you're a public librarian.
Oh, really? Yeah, yeah. Because, dude, her and
Just
I
kidding. It's fine.
Yeah, nice. Her and I were always competitive.
Yeah.
Especially in an intellectual way, in board games
Yep.
and things like that.
Yep.
And she went one way, I went another. But
That's
yeah, that's
awesome.
amazing. Libraries are incredible places. As a guy
Yep.
who's worked there, I'm always trying to encourage my wife to become one. She doesn't want to, but I really think
Okay.
it's an amazing
It's an awesome
situation, and all the people that work at the Nyack Library, Paula and
Yep.
Terry and formerly Donna and,
Yep.
and all Tracy and
Yep.
all the Belinda,
Yep.
all the wonderful people that work there. I hope you hear this. I love you guys, and thank you for always being so kind to me and
nice.
so respectful and encouraging of this music thing that I'm doing too, which here we are now at 39.
Yeah.
And I have a store in Nyack, which kind of just
Amazing.
always seemed like it was going to happen.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, thanks. Enough about me, though. So, Eric, you were in Peekskill.
Yep.
Did you work your way up the ranks through Peekskill there?
Well, once I got my degree, I was actually, while I was getting my graduate degree at Queens College in Queens, New York, they sort of created a position called librarian trainee, which is common in libraries. While you're getting your degree, it's pretty common for you to also be doing the work, doing the regular work. So I was a teen librarian in Peekskill. But when I got my degree, I became a librarian at New York Public Library.
Mm-hmm.
So I started working at a branch for the New York Public Library in the Bronx called Woodlawn.
Mm-hmm.
And the Woodlawn branch is sort of right on the northern, it sort of borders Yonkers, McLean Avenue in Yonkers. I don't know if you're familiar, but
Nope.
that's where it is. But I ended up working several different branch libraries for New York Public Library.
Right. And
So I
then,
did that for like 2 or 3 years.
right. And then there was kind of a debacle over at the Nyack Library that we're going to gloss over as far as their director position went. How did you end up interviewing for that? And
So I mean, it's funny. So after New York Public Library, I've done like 4 different jobs. I actually, right after New York Public Library, I went to go work in Germany as a librarian.
oh, whoa.
Yeah, for the U.S. Army.
Whoa.
I was a librarian for the U.S. Army. Because my wife is German, and she had said, "Oh, it would be cool if you could find something in Germany." And I thought, I don't know if that's really going to work out because I don't really speak German. I do now a little bit. I'm not great, but I can get by. And I found this job working for a installation in Ansbach, Germany. Which is pretty close to sort of in Bavaria, not too far from Nuremberg, Munich, that area of Germany, and worked there for a year and a half. And when you work in the position that I worked at, essentially what they do is they have housing in Germany for soldiers and their families. Mm-hmm. So what they do is they try to recreate a feeling of what it's like to be in the United States. So they have supermarkets and they have, bars on these bases, and they have things that are meant to keep morale up. Mm-hmm. And one of those things is libraries. So what I did was essentially work in a public library in Germany on a base. So speaking English and just being on an army base all the time. You couldn't live there, but yes, worked there for a year and a half, and then I went over to work in Heidelberg, Germany, which is on the other side of the country, and that was to run the software that manages all the books. So I'm sure you're familiar with Cersei Dynex or some of these other things that actually check books in and out. Right? That's a piece of software that has to be managed by somebody. That's what I did, but for all of Europe, all of Army Europe.
Whoa!
So we had installations in Italy and Netherlands and Germany, obviously, and all those places had to manage the exact same catalog, which you're probably familiar with, just for Rockland County or the RCLS system, right? So
they did it for the entirety.
They did it for all of Europe. Yeah. So you would be sort of running around, driving to Italy or whatever. It was amazing. Are you kidding me? What a job!
Yeah.
I mean, it's awesome. You sort of travel around Europe, sort of troubleshooting issues related to this piece of software that you've become an expert at. But you happen to be in Pisa, Italy, or wherever, it's that's an amazing thing, right? Yeah. I mean, that's a really cool position. So I did that for 3 years.
So your total in time in Europe is about 5 years there?
Yeah, like 4.5, around there. 4.5, 5, yeah.
Cool.
And then came back.
And still in Westchester?
No, actually, I got a job doing that exact same thing, managing the software. But for a library consortium called Mid-Hudson, which was centered in Poughkeepsie and ran up and down the Hudson River. I just happened to get that job. It was time for us to come back. We felt like, it'd be nice to come back. My mom was getting older. And I thought, it'd be nice to be back. So I worked there for about 2.5 years, essentially doing the same thing I was doing in Germany, but for the American libraries, and there were like maybe 70 libraries that we would manage the software for. So did that, and that was really fun and totally gratifying and exciting, and learned a lot about upstate New York in a lot of towns. I mean, even though I'm from there, I did not know a lot of those towns, so I would do the same thing driving around.
Troy and all that.
Well, it was actually south of that, so our northernmost library would have been like Hudson, would have been around there, like Kinderhook. That was the top end of it. So Albany and Troy and Schenectady and all that was a different system. But yeah, I mean, that was amazing. That was also a wonderful, wonderful gig. And then after that, I also spent 8 years. So it's a while till I get to Nyack. I spent 8 years working, doing a very similar thing, but in an expanded role for the Greenwich Public Library in Greenwich, Connecticut.
Are you living in all these places, just bouncing around the whole time? Or you have a home base?
We had a home base, and it was actually Sleepy Hollow.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're in Westchester, but you're going up to Poughkeepsie. You're
driving up to Poughkeepsie. Yep. Driving over to Greenwich, coming over here. Yep. So, but yeah, when we moved back from Germany, like 12, 13 years ago, we've always lived just sort of near Tarrytown, Sleepy Hollow. Currently, we live in Austining.
Okay.
But yeah, it's been that area. But I worked in, and this might be a little boring for your listeners, but I worked doing the same thing, not managing the database, but managing the department that purchased all the books for the libraries in Greenwich. So we had 4 librarians, and their jobs were just to buy books.
Okay.
I mean, they did some, a few other things, but their main tasks were related to buying books. So we had our main library, and then we had 2 branches. So we would have hundreds of books coming in a week that all needed to be processed. You put the Mylar around it, you stamp it, you make sure that the stickers are on correctly.
Right.
But you also have to buy them. You also have to make sure you weed them out of the collection when you need to weed them.
Right.
You manage the collection, and that's what I did for 8 years at the Greenwich Library before coming to Nyack.
Right. Wow. So you've done a little of everything. And by the way, I don't think it's boring. I think it's fascinating to learn about anything, especially, no one. That's
nice of you, Dylan.
No one gets into the weeds except people who have been working in the libraries. Right. They don't know about the Mylar. They don't know about the Dewey Decimal System is gone now, or it's like kind of half there.
Yeah.
They don't know. But anyway, so summary, you've been all over the Mid-Hudson and upstate New York, all over Europe, and all just through this library science.
Yep.
And, you've done software, but then it seems like at the base,
Teens. I worked with teens. Yeah.
So you've done a little of everything.
Yep.
Time to become the director.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So you came
sort
over
of
to
led it to this point.
Yeah.
All of my career, sort of, yeah. And it was funny when I was at Greenwich, I thought that it would be fun to be a director. I don't know what crazy thing led me to believe that, but yeah, sure. But yeah, this job popped up. One of actually my old colleagues at Mid Hudson, she sent it to me. She was like, I think you would probably be pretty good at this job. And I thought, I wasn't actively looking, but yeah, she sent me the job, and I thought, you know what, I'm gonna go for it.
Nice.
And I loved being in Sleepy Hollow, Tarrytown, Ossining, that area. We would come over to Nyack all the time.
Mm-hmm.
It was my wife and I also have a 7-year-old son. We would come over here and have lunch, or I would come to Main Street Beat. I've been coming to Main Street Beat since I moved back from Germany, and it's like my main record store. Nothing on that side. I always come and use that record store because it's the one I like. They're so friendly. Record stores can often be pretty standoffish, but they're super friendly there. And they're so open, and they want to share their knowledge, which I think is great. And how I used to do a record store. So anyways, I would come over and we would walk around Nyack, eat at the Art Cafe, which is one of my favorite restaurants in the area. I love it so much. And so I had a really good kind of a working knowledge of what Nyack was like. So when I saw the job pop open, I thought, yeah, I could see myself working in that town. It's a really cool town. I didn't know much of it beyond just the stores that I talked about and the restaurants that we would come to. But I thought, you know what, I'm going to go for it. I did.
And you got it.
And they amazingly hired me.
Nice. Well, they're good people.
Yeah, for sure.
Takes one to know one,
Oh, that's nice of you to say.
Yeah,
but
for sure. Well,
yeah.
I know all those people pretty well.
Yeah.
And I know not exactly, but I kind of know what they're looking for.
Yeah.
Looking for somebody who's personable, lets them do their own thing.
Yep.
Trusts them to
Yep.
handle their business and their department. And so
Yep.
far, it seems like you're pretty good at both of those things.
Yeah, no, you're 100% right. So, the people who get into the library work are often self-driven. They're also really talented in the thing that they do. So it's best to let them do the thing that they do, and sort of run with it. I, in my position, just look at ways where I can figure out how to pull it all together under one sort of mission. So that's one of the things I do. But probably even more important than that, it's important to figure out ways that we can assist the vision that you have. So what is it you want to do? How can we get to the point to get to your idea? Whatever that idea is,
Right.
and sometimes be a cheerleader and say, yeah, let's encourage that. Let's encourage the ideas that could pop up around programming, different ideas around collections, different ideas around outreach, all of the things that the library should be doing, and successful ones do well. I try to figure out ways that we can encourage that and make it better. So
Great. That's amazing.
it's a goal.
And so now that you've been here for a while and you've seen what the community, how long have you been here?
I've been here for 1 year.
1 year, full year.
Yeah, full year. I'm a full year in.
Nice. Now that you can see what's going on with the community, do you guys have anything that you want to promote that's happening where we can find it on nyacklibrary.org, by the way? And
Thanks for the plug.
yeah, of course. But is there something really cool that you want to talk about a little bit?
I think what I would say to all of your viewers and people that is that the library is for everyone, and sometimes I think traditionally people come to the library with little kids and they use the library for story times and things like that, and it's an amazing resource for that. And then people come to the library when they're a lot older, maybe they're retired. They come and they, want to get out of the house and they want to participate in programs. But, there's a middle ground that also is awesome, and a group of people that we encourage to use the library. So we really, it's the one place where we try to be everything to everybody. And we're excited for people to come to a place and talk face to face and maybe not be on their phones and maybe have conversations and like we're having and be involved in a book club or be involved in a program where, we've just been through this crazy pandemic and it was awful. And, we have these smartphones that sort of put up these walls around us. And I think what the library is always about is sort of breaking down that and getting people to come together. So I would yes, we have lots of awesome programs, and please come for summer reading. It's a great program. Summer reading is not just for children, it's for teens, it's for adults. We want to make sure that you're reading over the summer. We have the Carnegie Concerts, which is this great, awesome program. So keep an eye out for that with wonderful music that happens. But I think just coming to the library and sitting down with somebody and having a conversation and, to me, that's that day-to-day human interaction that happens is where the value of the library pays off a lot.
Amazing.
Every single day.
I love that. I love that you say that because this is a huge part of my entire existence here at the Rock Shop is watching parents come in and meet the other parents. Watching a teenage girl start babysitting for somebody else's family, creating a whole community that didn't exist before this existed. And so the library's always existed, maybe since 1901 or whatever, when Andrew Carnegie threw down some cash for you guys. I don't know, but whatever. That's hundreds of years of existence. Let's let that continue to help foster our community and go in there and sit down and grab a book and just read it. Go say hi to the reference librarian and tell him what you're studying. Ask him about a recommendation for a class you can take for free. There's a million resources that I bet you don't know about. Grab an app, put it on your phone, and then all of a sudden, no, they don't have the book at the Nyack Library. Guess what? They have it over in Mount Kisco. It'll be there in five days. Yeah,
Dylan, I think that, your sort of instinct to want it to build community is great. And I love that. And seeing kids, especially seeing teenagers get out of their house and be involved in something that isn't around Instagram, I think is a win every single time. So when you do that and when you have concerts and you have all these things that you're building around this place, that's awesome.
Thank you. My friend Soren Song came in the other day, and they and I had a wonderful community of musicians when I first moved to Nyack 18 years ago. And we fostered this beautiful community and kind of came up together in this way. And then it hasn't been there for like a decade, maybe even more. And then they told me, you know what? You're starting it again.
Great.
With the 8-year-olds, 9-year-olds, and 10-year-olds, they're going to be 20-something one day. And there's going to be all these new bands and all these musicians and things. So it doesn't happen overnight, right? We got to put the work in and make it happen one interaction at a time.
That's right. And every time that somebody, like I said, every time that somebody has those experiences, it is the dividends are paying off that you're not even seeing, and I noticed that in the library, and I notice it long after kids grow up, like you said, and say, oh God, I remember coming in and, we used to do this program as teenagers where we created zines or, we did, play Dungeons and Dragons or whatever. It doesn't matter. But it's just that they had this experience and that the experience was born out of the community that had been created in that place,
right?
In that physical space that you built. And you built it here. We built it at the library. So that's great work.
Great. Thank you. That sounds like a great place to stop.
Cool.
We love the Nyack Library here at the Rock Shop in Nyack, and everybody, the library's for everybody. To just kind of put one more little exclamation point on that is there's community everywhere. You just have to find yours. There's yoga communities. There's many places besides Instagram and bars where you can meet people.
That's right.
So Thank you very much for listening. www.therockshopnyack.com, thenyacklibrary.org. Mr. Eric McCarthy, it was a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Dylan.
All right, guys. Peace.